This is why I say that enlightenment is spreading out the the sphere of facts that we get. It's because it's linked. As you said, you talked about the academic bond, um, and this is why I relate enlightenment to a concept of enlightenment, a rational enlightenment, to a sense of identity. You can have a sense of identity with groups, you know. You can, just as your whole body is a group sense of identity that you can naturally have, and you naturally have a sense of identity with your family and larger communities and your, uh, the mammals and the biosphere. And this is the bond that we're talking about. That's how we achieve a sense of identity. And when you assign your identity to these larger groups, then suddenly rationality um, works for enlightenment. And there is none of this, oh, you could murder some group and that would be rational. That doesn't sound rational to me because I have a shared identity. And you can put it in these other terms of, oh, well, then those people will be trying to kill you, and so on and so forth. And you can eradicate a whole people, and some of the people you didn't want to eradicate will think that sucks, and they will be turned against you. And this is sort of a big circle and a runaround where you'll just keep running around and then trying to face these, oh, but what if I could do it without having an enemy? But if you look at it as a shared identity, then you don't have to. It's not a matter of those details of what can I get away with. It's merely what is rational in my self-interest when I am a group. Okay, and that's why I argue for that. I'm kind of surprised sometimes that people don't see how this formulation works out to identify the kinds of things that we want to call enlightened, the kind of results, and it achieves a sort of a rationality in partnership with enlightenment. And I think the only missing piece, which for me is not missing, is that when you get wider and wider facts, you naturally feel a sense of identity. The more information you get, the more you expand your sense of identity, or I should say, have access to these broader senses of identity, because I think you keep them all. You keep your individual and your communal senses of identity. And to me, enlightenment is expanding that out without negating any of the inner spheres of this enlightenment. You know, to think about what's good for your society is to think about what's good for the individual. And the sense that you might sacrifice, like sacrifice your life to save your family, this isn't a denial of your personal enlightenment, of taking care of yourself and treating yourself right. It's simply a matter of you've decided that to treat yourself right, you're going to make that sacrifice. And it's different to make that kind of sacrifice than to say, to become a slave or something that's a violation of your own ethos of how you should treat yourself. Um, but because I don't really like hearing that, oh, rationality could argue, Nazi conclusions, as if the Nazis were rational. No, there's a reason that stuff only lasts 6 years and makes a big stink in the world that we're going to remember for centuries. Um, Granted, there's been similar things in the past that lasted longer and longer, but why? That lasted longer, but why is it getting shorter and shorter? It's because the more of these facts that you have access to, the more you see how the systems work that you're a part of, the more that you are able to visualize your identity as the identity of these systems, not denying your other identities, but of any system that you are or are a part of. And you start to get a more enlightened attitude. You get less of a greedy attitude. You shed these ideas that perhaps it's rational to, you know, oppress or murder some group and to think in those kinds of ways. Um, and yet, no, it doesn't. It doesn't entirely prohibit that. But you might be fighting someone that wants to kill you, and you might have to defend yourself with aggression. Is that unenlightened? I mean, at worst, it happens outside enlightenment. It happens when an enlightened approach breaks down and is non-functional, and you have to shrink your identity down to, wait a second, the way I need to treat myself is not to sacrifice my own survival. And anyway, it's an interesting thread.